let's turn to Ukraine. Ambassador, Trump and all of his picks have said they would immediately end the war in Ukraine. Trump's been saying this on the campaign trail for months. You've said the only way to end the war in Ukraine is to convince Russia to stop attacking. Russia started this war. You say the only way to stop Russia from attacking Ukraine is to convince Putin it'll cost him too much to continue. How do you do that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's very similar to what we just talked about with Iran. You have to put on the table consistent support for Ukraine that will tell Putin he's not going to get any more and it's going to get worse. Sanctions are the #1 thing. The Biden administration has waived energy payments to Russian banks from the application of sanctions, and this has allowed Russia to keep getting resources into its war machine. We have given them aid up until now, but we could flip that into a lend-lease program where we're not using taxpayer money, but we're letting Ukraine borrow the money to buy American weapons. And we could say we're not going to put any restrictions on how they're used until Russia agrees to end the war. And I think that putting those things on the table will get into Putin's mind that this is going to be a long 4 years of more war, and it's not going to go Russia's way. So that it gives Putin an incentive to want to end it. And that is coming at a good time because we're already seeing signs of stress in Russia's economy, over 20% inflation, over 20% interest rates, lack of components in some things. We're seeing stress in their military effort. They're having to bring in North Korean troops. They've had incredible casualties, 1,700 in one day, 1,700 killed in one day just earlier this week. It was a record. And they're bringing in North Koreans because they can't get enough people from Russia to fill out the ranks.
Yeah.
These are not experienced warfighters. No one's got good training. They're using World War II era equipment. So Putin is going to have to start thinking hard about what's his interest here. And I think he may look to take advantage of Trump coming in to say, okay, we're going to come up with a deal here. Then the onus is back on the Trump administration. How do you make that deal stick? How do you make it last? How do you make sure it never happens again?
Yeah, you know, I don't know. People have been trying to read Putin. Kremlinologists have been trying to decipher what's going on with him and in his head for years and years. You know, we saw, on the one hand, officially the Kremlin refused to, say anything about Trump's election victory. Yeah. Then 2 days later, a pretty fawning post from Putin himself praising how manly Trump was for surviving assassination and winning election. Yeah. It seems like this is really tricky stuff.
It is, and Trump calls himself the art of the deal president. I think the best way to characterize him is that he's more transactional than any ideology that we could come up with in terms of foreign policy. But he'll have met his match with Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin is not afraid to lie, cheat, and steal his way out of an agreement. And we have to be very skeptical, especially the Congress.
Yeah, is he just going to be happy with 20% of Ukraine, or is he going to want more?
He'll say, I'll take 20% now and get the rest of it later.
Ambassador, last thoughts,
right.
10
and
seconds.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Mike is exactly right. That is the Vladimir Putin who only understands force. He doesn't respect anything else. And that's why we have to put him in a position where he agrees to end the war now. And then we have to take steps to carry out a long-term armament and strengthening of Ukraine, bring them into NATO and the European Union, maybe even put some European NATO forces on the ground in Ukraine as a tripwire and for training and equipping. But we've got to convince Vladimir Putin that it is not worth it to him to try this again.
Otherwise known, Ambassador, as raising the stakes. You know, once you put once you accept Ukraine into NATO and put NATO troops in there, Putin invading doesn't just touch off a war with Ukraine; he touches off a war with the Western world.
Right. It's the only thing that has deterred war in Europe for 75 years.
All right, Ambassador Kurt Volker, Michael Allen, thank you both so much for being here and lending us your expertise. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.